Welcome to the Bladder Leakage Masterclass. My name is Lisa and I'm a pelvic and women's health physiotherapist here in Canberra. Today we're going to learn about what bladder leakage is, what we do about it in clinic and what you can do about it at home. Finally, we're also going to learn a really important bladder leakage tip that you'll be able to implement from today once you learn it. So that's going to be a super important part as well to get from today's masterclass. If we come all the way back to the anatomy of the pelvis and the bladder, let's start with the bony bits we can feel on the outside. So if you roll forward in your chair, if you're seated, you might find your pubic bone. And if you roll backwards, or that bit right at the back of your body is your sacrum or tailbone. And then we've got our sit bones either side. So if you wobble side to side in your chair, you might find your sit bones. And underneath there is a group of muscles, and these are our pelvic floor muscles. And it's a group of muscles that are really important for a whole lot of pelvic functions. One thing they're really important for is opening and closing holes. So they keep urine in, let urine out, keep feces in, let feces out, keep wind in, let wind out, and are really important for sexual health. There's other pelvic floor muscles that are really important for pelvic organ support. So that is like prolapse, is keeping our normally bladder, uterus, and bowel inside the body. So all of these muscles work together to accomplish those pelvic functions. If we now have a look more at the bladder, our bladder is a storage organ. So it's a little bit like a balloon in that our kidneys make urine and it comes through our ureters and then it drips into our bladder. So slowly over normally a couple of hours, our bladder will get more and more drips from our kidneys and it will slowly expand and fill. At some point, we'll get a signal to our brain saying I need to go to the toilet, and then we would walk to the toilet and go to the bathroom and pass urine. So when we're talking about bladder function, there's really just two main pressure systems, is the pressure inside the bladder and the pressure on the outside of the bladder that stops urine coming out. So when we're not urinating, the pressure closing the bladder is going to be higher than the pressure in the bladder. And when we are urinating, the pressure in the bladder is going to be higher than on the outside. So normally in our urethra. That is the channel where the urine goes from the bladder to the outside of our body. So when the pressure above is higher than the pressure below, urine comes out. And when the pressure below is higher than the pressure above, that is when we are holding urine. So that is just true in any moment of the day, whether we're peeing on purpose or peeing by accident. So for example, if we're peeing on purpose, our bladder has squeezed and our pelvic floor has relaxed to let urine out on purpose. If we're purposefully holding urine, so we're just going about our normal daily life, our pelvic floor will be contracted, so that pressure will be high, and our bladder pressure will be relaxed, so we are not passing urine. If we're accidentally passing urine, the bladder pressure will have gone up for some reason. That could be that the bladder walls have contracted, but they're not meant to be contracting. It could be that another pressure from the rest of our body, like a big cough or a sneeze or a jump, has increased the pressure on the bladder. Or it could be that there's other things pushing on the bladder, like maybe we're constipated, and that pressure is pushing the urine out past the pelvic floor pressure. So if that pressure at the bladder is higher than the pressure in the urethra, urine will come out of the body, even if it's by accident. In comparison, the opposite can happen, is that some people will be trying to pass urine, so the pressure in their bladder will be higher on purpose. Maybe their bladder is contracting to go to the toilet, but the pressure in the urethra is too high, so they can't pass urine. So there can be purposeful peeing, there can be accidental peeing, and there can be purposeful holding, and there can be accidental holding. Today we're focusing on a type of urinary incontinence or bladder leakage called stress urinary incontinence. And that's when that pressure above from a third factor like that cough, sneeze, laugh, jump is pushing on the bladder and the pelvic floor muscles can't overcome that. So that's stress urinary incontinence. So people will come to me and say things like, oh Lisa, I leak when I cough. Oh Lisa, I leak when I laugh. I leak when I am vomiting, I leak when I'm running. So when we leak with a physical activity, physical exertion of pressure or stress, that's why it's called stress urinary incontinence. With all types of urinary incontinence, it's really important to see a medical professional, as well as either your allied health professional or, when we talk about later, trying to DIY your own program. it's really important to get that diagnosis correct and making sure we're ruling out any serious pathology. So my first thing that I really want to talk about that's really important today is making sure that you're seeing either your allied health professional like a physiotherapist like myself, or your medical professional like your GP or gynecologist to talk about these issues, so then they can decide what referral pathways or investigations need to happen from there. The other thing you might start to work on is decreasing the pressure at the top where the bladder is and increasing the pressure or our ability to close the urethra. And that normally comes in the form of pelvic floor muscle training. So our pelvic floor muscles that we learnt about before help close the urethra, increase the pressure at the bottom half of this system so that urine can't come out when it's not meant to. We want to be able to increase that pressure against those large high pressure activities like coughing and jumping and running. With that pelvic floor muscle function, we really want good strength. So that's the ability to contract strongly. We really want the ability to contract for a long time. So that's endurance. Is not only can we take one step or one step of a run, is can we run for a long time, or can we do not just one cough but 10 coughs. And the other thing we want is coordination. So that's the ability to turn on and off really quickly and be reactive to what's going on. So let's say a sneeze or a cough comes suddenly, or running's a perfect example of where we step quite quickly, is we need to be reactive in our pelvic floor movements. So turning on really quickly is important as well. But how do we get that good pelvic floor muscle function? Pelvic floor muscle function is normally improved through pelvic floor muscle training. So just like we would go to the gym and work any other muscle in the body, we can work our pelvic floor muscles very similarly. So we learn to do exercises and we program exercises for the pelvic floor muscles. Let's reconnect in with those pelvic floor muscles now, finding your sit bones on either side of your chair. Imagining the muscles in between those sit bones, I want you to pretend to stop the flow of urine, squeeze and lift. Relax and lower. Have a reflection as to whether or not you can feel any movement or what happens when you do that. The next one we're going to have a go at is the middle passage. So imagining the opening of the vagina, squeeze it shut, lift it up towards your belly button. Lower down and relax. Have a big breath, make sure you're relaxed all the way off. Do you feel any movements? Do you not feel anything at all? Have a reflect on what happens when you do that motion. Think squeeze the opening of the vagina, lift up to the belly button, lower down and relax. What do you feel? The last one we're going to try is back passage. So squeezing your back passage like you're stopping passing wind now. Squeeze and lift. Relax and lower. Well done. Have a wiggle. On that last one, reflect in all of them, did you find your other muscles moving? Did you find your inner thighs tensing, your bottom tensing up and down, your shoulders or your jaw clenching, or probably the most common one is our abdominals contracting at the same time? It's really important that our pelvic floor muscles can work independently of all of our other muscles, because sometimes we're going to be doing movements or activities that their other muscles are contracting or relaxing, and our pelvic floor muscles need to be doing the opposite. So they need to work both together and independently of the other muscles. So how do we get a stronger, more endurance, better coordinated pelvic floor? So with that pelvic floor muscle training, I really use 3 main pillars to make sure that we're really getting the best out of our program. So the first pillar is that the pelvic floor muscle training needs to be progressive. So if you wanted big biceps in the gym, we wouldn't go to the gym and use the 1 kilo weight and then continue to use the 1 kilo weight forever. That might be where we start. We might start at the 1, we might start at the 5. That depends on you. But then we've got to build up. So on day 1, we might do 8 reps. On week 2, we might do 10 reps. On week 3, we might do 12 reps, and then we might move up to the next weight. So then we might be at 2 kilos. So it's really important to use that same ideas, that same framework in our pelvic floor muscle training. And we want to make it harder over time. And there is so many different ways to do that. The second big pillar that is really important in pelvic floor muscle training is isolation. When we use our pelvic floor muscles, some people tend to contract other muscles, and then they find that their pelvic floor muscles don't work so well when they can't use that strategy, that compensation strategy anymore. So for example, someone might be really shocking for squeezing their bottom muscles or their inner thigh muscles when they do their pelvic floor. And every time they do their pelvic floor, they're squeezing those muscles extra. However, when they do the activity that makes them leak, let's say running for example, they might have a split stance and they can't squeeze their bottom muscles at the same time as their pelvic floor, so then it won't be working the same anymore because it can't use that co-activation, can't use that compensation strategy to get the pelvic floor moving. So we need to be able to use our pelvic floor independently of any other muscles being in a certain position or being activated. The last pillar of pelvic floor muscle training is the duration of the program. So similar to our bicep curls before, if we go to the gym one time or even for a whole week or 2 weeks and do our bicep curls at the gym, we're not going to see a difference in that muscle bulk and that strength. Very, very little, if anything. We really need to be doing a program for 4, 6, 12 weeks to really see a difference in that pelvic floor muscle strength. So it's important to keep up with your program for quite a few weeks before deciding whether or not it's working for you. From here, it's normal to ask, okay, so how do I implement this pelvic floor muscle training? And there's normally 3 key ways that people will choose to do this. So one way is to work one-on-one with a health professional, so seeing your local pelvic health physiotherapist or via telehealth if you don't have someone nearby. That's our gold standard of treatment for bladder leakage, is doing that pelvic floor muscle training one-on-one with a health professional that can really guide whether or not you're doing it right and implement those strategies we learnt before. The progression, the duration and the isolation, making sure you're doing those pelvic floor contractions correctly. The second option is some kind of online training that still has those principles. So say a program that is many weeks long that has the learning how to do pelvic floor muscle training. It teaches you progression. Okay, we're going to start at this rep range and build up those second holds or the complexity of the exercises over time. And thirdly would be kind of like a DIY program, and that can work for many people that don't have access to the first 2 options. So that could be learning how to do pelvic floor muscle training through online programs like this and through, say, my YouTube and Instagram, and then trying to make a program yourself. And that can be a really great way to do it as well. No matter what option you go with for your pelvic floor muscle training program, it is so important to do a proper assessment, particularly with a medical professional, so like your GP or gynecologist, to make sure that that stress urinary incontinence or urinary incontinence bladder leakage in general is not because of a serious pathology. So no matter if you see a physio one-on-one, if you do a group online type program, or if you DIY your pelvic floor muscle training program, it is really important to do that first step of seeing your medical professional. I'll leave some links to all of those big 3 options for pelvic floor muscle training below, so you have all the resources you need to keep moving through your journey. The thing that I really want to also get to today is that pelvic floor tip that is going to absolutely save so many bladder leakage accidents. I would love if you share this with all of your friends, because I think it is just the most important tip in the history of the world. And it is called the knack. So the knack is a purposeful pelvic floor muscle contraction that is done on an activity that you think you're going to leak. So have a think of an activity that you would generally leak on. So this could be a cough or a sneeze, or doing a squat, or whatever that might be for you. Think of that activity. I'll use a cough as an example. So if we go to do that activity, we're going to turn pelvic floor on first. So to turn pelvic floor on, pretend to stop the flow of urine. Squeeze and lift the opening where the vagina is, or squeeze your back passage. Any of those cues should work just fine. So squeeze that, then do the activity. So I'm going to squeeze and then do my cough. So and then turn pelvic floor back off. So we're purposefully doing a pelvic floor muscle contraction before doing an activity that makes us leak. This is called the knack and is an absolute lifesaver and decreases bladder leakage episodes all the time in clinic. So I hope that you take that away today as a fantastic thing you can implement from this very second moving forward. Is if you are going to do an activity that you think will make you leak, squeeze pelvic floor first, do the activity and then relax back off. I hope you have found today very helpful and you've gotten some great ideas and tips for your bladder leakage journey. If you need any help or questions from me, please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, I've popped all the resources that you will need to progress your pelvic floor muscle training journey down below. And I will see you either online or in clinic sometime soon.